Hi viewers. Thanks so much for tuning back into another episode of A Case of Distrust. Last episode, we got into a car accident. Green's dead. Don't know how that happened. He was shot twice in the chest. Also don't really know how we got into a car accident. That seems a little suspicious. So hopefully we find something out this episode. Let's take a look. So we're in our apartment. I stood up from the creaking bed and surveyed the cluttered apartment. Let's see. The apartment was already cramped when the Murphy bed was up. With it down, I could barely squeeze through the living room. The cat slept at the foot of the bed. I scratched behind his ear, and he seemed to like that. Okay. The lamp had belonged to my Uncle Louis. I think we already got this. Yeah. Alright. I think that's pretty much it. Yeah. This is probably still empty. Yep. Got these. So, she was in a terrible car accident and was just brought home, not even to the hospital? What on earth? I don't understand this. I stared at the doorway and took a deep breath. I supposed I owed Shipman enough to help solve the case, even if Green had given me the runaround. After all, what type of detective would leave a case half solved? There's only one place to go, to the police station. Alright. Although Green had just been using me, his life had apparently been in danger all along. I resolved to find his killer. I headed to the North Beach station for any information Shipman could give me before starting the chase. I gave the address and slouched in the backseat of my taxi cab. I thought a good way to pass the journey might be to chat with the driver. Now, the headquarters building, Okay, wait, this is new. I thought it looked even more sour than I had before. I stepped out of the taxi cab and walked through the station doors, ready to chase any leads on Green. But standing in front of me as I entered, bawling her eyes from her sockets, was Mrs. Green. She saw me and brought her wailing closer. How suspicious. Alone, she exhaled through her, sobbing. You were working for my husband. What happened? Her breathing obscured her next sentence, but I got the general idea. I am suspicious. I told her I knew as little about the matter as she did, but what I was looking into, and I was sure the officers were doing their best. She begged me to help them, again drowning most of her sentences with her sobbing. I promised I would try. She took a slow inhale, raised her chest, and walked out of the station. Yeah, quite the act. When she was out of sight, Fred Grant came around the corner and let out a snort. Grant was another investigator for the SFPD. I knew it was Behair. I studied his ruddy face. Let's study his face. I studied his ruddy face, strewn with broken capillaries, that it gave the impression of a map of streams. A cigar, and there's a cigar, often poked through his mouth, hardening his jaw and twisting his face into a scowl. I suppose that was an appropriate look for a man who enjoyed his bribes in liquid form. Grant had never been a supporter of policewomen, and he was no fan of mine. He lighted up the cigar and said, the widow seems pretty torn up about him. You really helping her out? It wasn't his place to know. So I just stared at him. Well, alright, if y'all ain't going to talk, then I should be on my way. Last thing I gotta do is head to the tin spoon, then toss this in the freezer. That meant he was about to close the cold case. He smiled as though he was glad to do it. I raised a questioning brow. You ain't chasing it up? I asked. Oh, he was about to close the case cold, not a cold case. Oh, jeez. He looked appalled. that I would even ask. We've got more to deal with than some dead gangster. The captain don't care about crap like this so long as it's not spreading too far. And what about the girl? What did she expect? He asked. I gave him a frown, to which he responded, "Look, if the missus wants you on this, that's her gamble, but it ain't gonna lead you nowhere. You don't expect support from the boys, not even if I find Green's killer?" He laughed. "If you get a confession, we'll cop 'em. Not something the DA can thumb his nose at either. They gotta admit 3 things. Alright, here's the next thing we gotta figure out. Means, how they killed Green, opportunity, when they did it, and motivation, why they'd bother. You do that, then sure, we'll be right behind you. But there ain't nobody here looking into it, I promise." He pulled on a cap and walked out. Okay. I hurled a glare in Grant's direction, and I was still fuming as I turned down the hallway towards Shipman's office. All this reading is making me tired. Shipman was frowning at the stacks of paper atop his desk, but he stood up and smiled when he saw me. "Glad you made it." I vented about Grant. I asked him what he found. Well, we don't care about Grant. We're going to ask him what he found. I asked him what he found on the case thus far. He's shaking his head, so apparently not much. He laughed and motioned at the paper stacks. "Not in any way related to Green. Piled under the trash now. Nobody's looking into Green's case here." Well, we already knew that. I must have scowled a mean look at him because Shipman was quick to shake his head. "Not that the case is dead, PC. But Captain has no one on it. Even Grant's coming off as soon as he can. We're underwater with other bunk." "So you have nothing for me?" "Not true. Department still did the regular foxtrot." He tossed me a beige folder. Inside was a large black and white photograph of Green's face, muscles relaxed and eyes closed. It looked almost normal, apart from the flattened hat behind his head and the dirt and grass behind that. The report behind the picture noted 3 important clues. Okay, here we go. First, that Green died at midnight the previous night. I cursed myself that I had been so close to stopping it. Second, that Green was killed with 2 .45 caliber bullets to the chest. Those slugs weren't from a pea shooter. Green was killed by a mean gun. And finally, that Green was found this morning laying in Washington Square Park. That was only a block away from the Tin Spoon. Okay. So I noted each of these facts and gave the folder back to Shipman. "All we got," Shipman said, laying the folder back on his desk. "Can pitch the gunman if you can prove the case, but you got to solve it without much support. Don't have time to help either," he sighed. "No point coming back here until you've got your man." "I never had much support. At least I'm on the case." Okay, well, we're not going to sit there and complain. We're going to say, "At least I'm on the case." We're going to be very happy. Stop being a Debbie Downer. I said. "That's good enough to leave me tickled pink," Shipman laughed. "But listen, we don't need a confession on this one. Captain doesn't want to run around." "Oh, but we do. We need a confession on this one. Captain doesn't want to run around." "Right. Grant mentioned that they'd have to admit how, why, and when they killed Green. That's it. Prove that. We'll pick them up." Never been on a murder before, right? Can get tense. Just know, if you accuse someone but can't prove everything, they'll turn like a switch. Might like you one minute but hate you the next. Chatting with folks is the easiest route to more information, but won't get any banner after you accuse someone of murder. Yeah, well, I mean, that makes sense. So be careful who you accuse. Could make your case harder if you go the wrong way. Okay, great. Note to self, don't accuse anyone because we're going to make things much harder for ourselves. "Alright, I get it," I said, and I internalized it. "And remember," Shipman concluded, "plenty of lies out there, but you can contradict means, motive, or opportunity with anything in your notes." I thanked him and walked out of his office. Okay. I stood outside the police station and went over the mantra. I had to prove means, motive, and opportunity for anyone I suspected of the murder. Once I found all 3 for a single person, I'd have them licked. I started out to begin the chase. Alright, here we go. Let's start at Green's house. Mrs. Green had pled with me at the police station. I hoped she would be more helpful than she had been the previous day. Yeah, same thing. The Green's apartment was, I don't think any of that's no. I came upon the Green house and knocked on the door. This time Mrs. Green opened it quickly. Miss Malone, she panted, with noticeable shock in her eyes. I'm just frightened about people knocking at my door, she said, by way of explanation. After what happened to my husband, everything feels so cold. Oh, I'm blabbering. Please come inside. She led the way to 2 chairs and we sat down. She was more awake than the previous day, but her hair was a bit tousled, and her S's hung in the air long enough to belie her lack of complete sobriety. Have you found anything about my husband's killer? She asked. No, we haven't. I shook my head and replied that there was nothing definitive just then. I said I would need to ask her some questions that might spark the investigation. She straightened in her chair and replied with certainly. Alright, ask about notes. Let's ask her about the tickets to St. Louis. It seems your husband was from St. Louis, I put to her. She squirmed but said nothing, so I pressed her. Miss Green, I'm investigating his death. You're right, she sighed. He had told me he was from out east, though he lied to everyone else. He claimed he had to flee from his past. I never asked the details, so that's all I know, and you're the first person I've told, okay? He also had 2 train tickets to get there, I continued. He wanted to return. Well, those tickets have no date printed on them. She paused, looked at me from underneath long lashes, and continued. He was thinking of going back there. I guess whatever trouble he had was blowing over, but I refused. I told him I wanted to stay in San Francisco. Whenever Connor and I quarreled, a sharp, wavering inhale cut off her sentence. Well, he kept them around to brandish, to show me that he loved me and that he stayed here only for me. I nodded and we spoke about something else. Yeah, right. Let's ask her about the plant. I pointed to the wooden flower. It's a struggle to keep any plant. Yes. I can't say. Glanced at the coat that hung on the rack. Where did you get this? I asked. Her unfocused eyes moved to the gray coat. Connor brought it home one day. It was too small for his frame, but I thought it looked swell on me. Seems built for a man, I said. Sure, but it's the freedom's age, darling. We can wear anything or even nothing at all. Alright, none of these are helpful. Okay, so nothing new with that. Let's ask her about the fake letter. The letter that your husband received had a small black hand on it. That hand, I explained, is a symbol. Nothing. Is a symbol of the notorious Black Hand Gang. Mrs. Green's eyes went wide. Yes, but I continued, it was a fake. The Black Hand doesn't run this far west. So who wrote it then, she asked. I told her that I thought her husband had written the letter and that I thought his bootlegging scheme was a bust. He also had those tickets to St. Louis. I think his plan was to fake his death and use me as cover while running back home. She sighed. I don't know about his dealings, Malone. Okay. Let's talk about the empty bottles. I mentioned the bottles on the ground. Yes, I'd made a terrible housemaid. She said it's hard for a working girl, you understand. Let's ask about... Do we have any... thing about... Yeah, she's a singer at the Tin Spoon. Let's talk about that. You're a jazz singer at the Tin Spoon. I asked. She gave a languid nod. I wondered how she started singing, so I asked. Yeah, let's ask. So I asked about her roots. Well, she startled. Papa never liked the petting parties or the liquor or the young men in roadsters, but he never made a fuss about it, not until I started to sing. That's enough to get a girl disowned. I suppose I was a teenage prima donna looking for attention, she sighed. Where were you raised? I questioned. She smiled, but there was a hint cruelty behind it. I'm a stern Miss Malone, the only child of Abraham and Elise. My maternal grandmother was Frances Strauss, sister of Levi. Your father is that Abraham Stern? I raised an eyebrow. He now owns a full quarter of the Levi Strauss company, and you're wondering how I came to this? She looked around the room. I imagined she would have cackled, but the laudanum kept her emotions muted. Well, I traded wealth for freedom at a young age, and I would do it again. Okay. I understood her reasoning. I nodded and changed the subject. Why were you following your husband? How did you end up at the Southern Coffee yesterday? I asked her. I told you I followed Connor to your apartment. I became furious when I saw he was calling on another woman. And why were you shadowing your husband to begin with? I pressed. Oh, that. She stuttered slightly. Well, I had heard rumors that Connor might have been unfaithful. I discovered they were baseless, but, well, a wife never truly knows. That is why I followed you all the way to Southern Coffee. I had to know the truth. She says she doesn't know anything about this. Okay. Your husband recently changed careers, I told her, to bootlegging. She sobbed. I know, the police told me the details this morning, that Connor had gotten a letter, he had begun bootlegging again, and that he thought a man named Redstone Stable was after him for it. It seemed they had told her everything. Turn the conversation to a different angle. Okay, so nothing new with that. Yeah, I didn't think so. Probably nothing useful from the ashtray either. Yeah. So I think we asked all of these, and we probably asked all of these too. We already talked about all these. I don't think... What were you doing last night? I asked. Her expression was surprised, but I told her that I just need to place everyone in their locations, Mrs. Green, to get a full picture of the evening. Of course, she said. Let's see. I was singing with the band and at the Tin Spoon. I was singing with the band, the show ending at about 10 o'clock. Then we went up to the billiard hall. Oh, it haunts me that Connor was so close when he was killed, she winced. But none of us heard anything, and with how loud we were and how sealed that building is. Yeah. How late were you in the pool room? I asked. Until early in the morning, say 2 or 3. But we don't have any evidence to contradict that. I nodded and moved on to further questions. I wish we could make notes ourselves. It doesn't even add that. Let's leave her be for now. See anything new? Doesn't look it. Okay, well, I think this is a pretty good place to stop. We got some information about what to do next, our next goals. Basically try and find out who's Mr. Green's killer. Hopefully next episode we can check the barbershop and the Tin Spoon Lounge, figure out what's going on there. I don't know that Frankie would have any information, but we can definitely go and talk to him too. Lots of stuff to still be done. Hopefully we can crack this case soon. So thank you so much for watching, and until next time, talk to you soon.